Welcome to the Hawkins Observer, a podcast where two half-lifelong friends recap and analyze every episode of Stranger Things as we prepare for the release of the final season this November.
As always, we'll give you a scene-by-scene recap, discussing plot and developments, as well as sharing our thoughts, memories, and reactions.
In this episode, we pick up where we left off, except it's a little different. For one, we're actually recording this podcast in the same room. In fact, this is the living room where it all started. And we began watching Stranger Things together.
And second, we haven't watched or reviewed this episode in preparation for this recording, this podcast.
No, we have not. Or pre-read anything we're going to say.
So we're going to watch each scene, hit pause, and then briefly give you a recap and our thoughts, and then move on.
So, dismount from your skateboard, but don't run outside, because it's time to dive into Season 2, Episode 4, Will the Wise. And we're going to give you 3 seconds right now to just go ahead and hit that like, hit that subscribe, do us a solid, and we're going to start watching the episode for the first time in a very long time right now together.
Years.
The next time you see us in a few seconds will be after we've seen the first opening scenes.
All right, we open right at the school where we left off as Will ran outside, but this time Joyce, fresh off of discovering that monster on the video footage, is in a real hurry to get to the school, and once again whips into the parking lot, peeling and squealing her tires, doesn't even park in a spot, just runs right into the grass, runs into the school yelling Will's name. But she's not the only one yelling Will's name, as Dustin and Dustin and Lucas and Max are running around the school also looking for Will. Joyce runs into Dustin and says, "What's going on? Where's Will?" And they're all looking for Will. Lucas runs into the school from outside with a walkie-talkie and says, "The field," and then runs back out. Joyce and Dustin and Max run out after Lucas into the field, and Mike is standing next to Will, kind of with his hand on his shoulder, but Will is in like a trance with his eyes kind of fluttering, and Joyce grabs him and was like, Will, I'm here." And Will just continues the trance. We switch to the upside down version of Will, what's happening to him kind of in his episode, and that shadowy monster is engulfing him and like going into every part of his body, and cuts back and forth between him in the field and in the upside down. And Joyce is very concerned. Max and Dustin and Lucas are all looking on. They're also very concerned, but eventually that shadow monster just kind of like finishes entering Will or doing whatever it's doing to Will. And as soon as that stops in the upside down, he kind of like comes out of it and like grasps in the real world right there in the field. Opening credits.
Yeah, in the real world, it looks like he's having a standing seizure because his eyes are kind of closed and fluttering, but he's still standing and just kind of shaking. But in the upside down, it just looks like he's just being possessed or inhabited by this, tornado spider, which I still think is a very scary concept. Yeah. But yeah, it's terrifying in both the upside down and the real world.
Yeah, and it almost feels like, I was mentioning to you earlier, that it almost feels like the monster like finishes totally entering Will's. Like it's almost like the monster totally possesses Will's body. Mm-hmm. At least that's what it looks like, without knowing what happens after that. But whenever the monster's done, Will kind of snaps out of it in the real world.
Yep.
Okay, we cut to the outside of the school, and Joyce is kind of walking Will down the steps, but the other kids hang back on the top of the stairs as Joyce and Will walk away. Mm-hmm. And Max goes, "Whew, that totally freaked me out." And then Lucas said, "Do you think it's true sight?" And Max says, "What is true sight?" And Lucas kind of recoils like, nothing. again, kind of makes a face like, I shouldn't have said anything. And then Joyce and Will drive back home to the buyer's house, and they're sitting at the kitchen table, and Joyce is just trying to get anything out of Will. Like, what did you see? What's happening? And Will's best, response is just, I don't know. And Joyce gets up from the table and goes and grabs the tracing paper that she used that has the kind of outline of the monster on it and says, I saw this in the video footage from that night at Halloween. These episodes you're having, I think Dr. Owens is wrong. I think they're real, but I can't help you unless you talk to me. Mm-hmm. Please tell me what happened. And Will is just like, I don't know. Joyce asks him, is this the same monster you saw from Halloween night? And Will goes, yes. And she goes, did you see it today out in the field? And he said, yes. And then he says, it's like a feeling. She's like, what does it want? And he goes, it got me. And he's like, I feel it. I feel it everywhere. I still feel it. And Joyce goes, listen to me. And then she kind of grabs him by both shoulders and goes, I am never going to let anything bad happen to you ever again. Such a determined parent to like protect the kid. And Will just cries into her shoulder like, I just want this to be over. And she's hugging him and then looking down at the tracing paper on the kitchen table with some disdain in her face. And Will is really on edge in this scene at the kitchen table.
Yes, he, as an actor, zooming out, he does such a good job looking genuinely terrified and just unworldly upset. Just the way this poor little kid was crying.
Yeah.
And at first, it's like he didn't want to tell his mom. Like, she really had to keep asking questions for him to finally say what he saw and how he feels. And so who knows why he held back at first.
Yeah, it's either that he doesn't want to revisit it or that he is genuinely confused by what's happening and just doesn't know how to explain it.
Yeah.
I think the fact that he says it is like a feeling kind of gives the indication that it's not like you can describe the feeling, to your mom who's not felt this before. But I just feel so bad for Joyce. That's like, she's totally helpless. Even in the first scene out in the field, she can't do anything. And then even, here, she's going to try her best to make sure nothing bad happens.
Yep.
What control does she have?
Oh, geez. This is tough to just immediately still be,
yeah.
What just happened?
So, and we start this next scene with 11 walking at night through the woods, and we immediately see that she's walking up to the cabin. And Hopper's on the porch in the kind of dark silhouette, smoking a cigarette, and 11 just walks right up the stairs and right past him into the house.
Uh-huh.
And Hopper follows her in, like, what, you're not even going to say anything to me? But he walks in, she's in her room, and he goes, you want to tell me where you went on your little field trip? Mm-hmm. Did you go see Mike? And 11 says, he didn't see me. And Hopper says, yeah, well, that mother and her daughter did. And you know what they did? They called the cops. He's like, who else saw you? And she says, nobody saw me. And then Hopper is just like, I have rules for a reason, and I keep you safe. And she says, you lie. You say I go, but you lie. And he goes, I don't lie. I feed and I teach and I protect. Mm-hmm. And Hopper is thinking that his end of the deal is he keeps her safe, and 11 is supposed to think that eventually she'll be able to leave, and 11 wants to leave much sooner than that. And they get into a bit of a shouting match back and forth about this, and Hopper goes to ground her by saying, you don't get any more Eggos and no TV for a week. And he goes to pull the TV kind of out from where it is, and 11 has secured it to the floor with her mind. And he pulls on it and he goes, fine, 2 weeks. Let go. And 11 won't let go. So Hopper yanks and yanks and yanks on the TV and goes, no TV for a month. I guess thinking that 11 would kind of relent at that point.
Right.
But 11 does not. She even says no. And Hopper kind of gets a little calm, and as parents do sometimes, he goes, well, congratulations. You've just lost TV forever, essentially. And just like yanks the cord out of the wall. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the TV turns off and 11 goes, no. And he goes, you have to understand there are consequences to your actions. And at one point during their shouting match, he does say, I only have 3 rules and you can't even do that. And 11 takes great offense, is hurt that she can't get out of the house, and then is offended that that Hopper says she can't even follow these simple rules. And he yells at her and he yells at her and he yells at her. And finally she, he calls her a brat, and he throws in like a dictionary at her to like look up the word brat. And she stops it in midair with her mind and then kind of throws it back at him, and he like karate chops it away. And 11 runs into a room. Hopper's yelling at her from the other side, and 11's just kind of had enough, and she sits kind of on the floor behind her door, and she's just kind of crying. And as Hopper's yelling, 11 just like, you can tell every ounce of her just like comes out, and she just screams at the top of her lungs. And right when she does that, every window and door and piece of glass in the cabin just shatter, and it's like literally a bomb goes off in the cabin, and we just see like Hopper ducking from all of the broken glass everywhere, and 11 is just crying in the room.
Yeah, I mean, gee whiz, again, there's on the one hand you got poor 11 with cabin fever and just missing her mic. But again, Hopper is like, it's still not safe. Like, this is not your time to go out and see the world. So it's like it's really an impossible situation, especially with, you know, Hopper trying to step in as a dad figure. I think at one point she said, you're just like Papa. I hate you. Like, ouch.
Yeah.
I've fed you for 353 days now. Like, yes. 11 doesn't get the sacrifice Hopper's going through to protect her, but she says, you're just like Papa and I hate you. So it's an impossible situation.
Yeah, and we feel for Hopper too, because I feel for Hopper because he's trying to be a good parent, and I think he realizes more than 11 does how impossible this situation is. And it can only work if 11 agrees to the rules. Yep. Now, Hopper can maybe be a little bit more understanding and compassionate. I just get the impression that might not be his strong suit.
Nope.
But now we have a big problem in that the cabin is not watertight anymore.
No more windows.
I mean, it's a disaster. In
Open air cabin.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so this next scene, not as intense as the last scene, obviously, but still nonetheless heartbreaking. And if you've noticed continuity errors between these scenes, it's for real, because we actually are taking real time to watch these episodes.
We sure are.
Scenes. So the next scene is Jonathan pulling up to the buyer's house. He walks in. It's pitch black. He realizes when he gets inside that his mom and Will are nowhere to be found. So he kind of looks through the dark house for them and walks down the hallway and says hello and kind of opens doors, and then realizes he gets into Will's room, and we see kind of a zoom out shot of Will's bed, and Joyce is in bed with Will, kind of like, you know, got her arm around him.
Yep. Big spoon.
Like following through on her promise that she's not going to let anything bad happen to Will. But even in that, she can't protect Will from what we expect is happening, which is his eyes are closed, but they're darting back and forth just like they were out in the field. And he, you know, appears to be asleep, but looks like he might not actually be asleep, like he's experiencing another episode or some fallout from what happened to him in the field. But Joyce is just asleep behind him, thinking that she's protecting him.
Yep. And as a reminder, Jonathan was last seen at the Wheeler's house in Nancy's room, and they had just called Barb's mom. So presumably that's where Jonathan was coming from.
Yes, they had devised some sort of plan that we still kind of don't know about, other than just the beginning of that plan was that Nancy wanted to call Mrs. Holland to ask to meet her because she hasn't been truthful with her.
That's right.
So Jonathan, it's late at night, but Will enjoys her sleeping.
Yep.
Okay, so 2 scenes kind of back to back here. We'll just recap both of them. In the Wheelers' kitchen, the family's having breakfast, and as Nancy has her back to the table, she kind of tells her mom, I was thinking about staying over the night with Stacy tonight because we were going to have a girls' night, just kind of doing our nails, gossiping, watching chick flicks, and Karen's totally agreeable to that. And Nancy leaves the house and kind of walks out their street and kind of like across the way with a carpet bag. And Jonathan is waiting in his car to pick her up. And Nancy gets in and essentially tells Jonathan, like, hey, you don't have to do this. And Jonathan says, stop saying that. Very determined. And they drive away.
Are we assuming it's a school day?
Well, that's a good question.
It looked like they were at the table getting ready for school that day. But
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe it is, maybe it's not.
Yeah. Because then the very next scene is Joyce is at her phone at the buyer's house, and she's calling the police station asking Flo, the receptionist, did Hopper get my messages, blah, blah, blah. Flo kind of asks if Joyce wants to be connected to another officer. She says, no, I need to speak with Hopper. So she kind of hangs up the phone, frustrated, but then Will kind of comes out of his room down the hallway, and she calls him sleepyhead and says, like, are you feeling any better? And he says, mm-mm. And she's kind of checking him out like a parent would check a kid who's potentially sick. Takes his temperature, and Will says, is it a fever? And Joyce goes, no. And she looks at the thermometer. It's actually several degrees colder than what you would want to be. Not 98, more like 94 or 92.
Yeah.
And so Joyce goes, that's weird. Do you feel cold? And he says, no, I just feel really out of it. Like I haven't woken up yet. And so Joyce says, okay. And Will kind of sees that Joyce might suggest a doctor. He says, no doctors. And she goes, I know. I told you no doctors. And I mean no doctors. But let me run you a bath, nice warm bath, and warm you up and get you to feeling better. And Will kind of, halfway agrees to it. And Joyce is running bath water in the bathroom, checking the temperature to make sure it's warm enough.
It makes you wonder why Will doesn't want to go to the doctor, because the last experience he had, I know it makes him feel weird to have to go to that doctor, but it wasn't necessarily a bad experience. We didn't see them running painful tests or even doing shots or taking blood. I don't know why he would be hesitant to go to the doctor right now.
Unless this monster is influencing his decision making to some level
I thought that
or
too.
another.
We
don't know that. Will is still talking like himself in his kind of personality and his voice. So the other thing, more practically, could just be the fact that he doesn't want to have to rehash it all to somebody else.
Sure.
He's already told the doctors at the lab what he's experienced. This isn't really anything new, although it kind of is worse, but he doesn't want to have to go back there.
Sure.
He doesn't want to have to introduce a whole new set of doctors to his situation.
Yep.
But we'll see what happens with the bath.
Hopefully a warm bath is all he needs. We'll see.
Yep. Okay.
So.
We open this next scene on Dustin in his room with his terrarium. He kind of pulls a cover off of the tank.
Yep.
And we see Dart. He does a really cute little rodent stretch and yawn. But Dustin kind of sprinkles some Three Musketeers in, and Dart actually looks pretty cute in this scene, I'll admit. And
not menacing.
Yeah, exactly. No yelling or screaming in this one. Of course, he's eating Three Musketeers.
Yep.
And Dustin just says, I'll be back after school. So it is a school day.
And this is Dustin living a lie.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah, you pointed it out while we were watching.
on the last time, the friends bust into the locker room or the bathroom. Where is he? And Dustin's got him in the hat, and he's like, I don't know.
Yeah, so he gets to school and doesn't see any of the other kids. And so he's like looking around and realizes he eventually finds them behind the school in the dumpster. And Lucas is inside the dumpster throwing bags of trash out as Mike and Max are outside. And Dustin shows up, like, what are you guys doing? And eventually they explain Lucas drew the short end of the short straw, so he had to get into the dumpster to look. But he realizes they're looking for Dart still. And so Lucas throws him a stick, like a broom handle, and says, well, are you just going to stand there? And then they all just kind of poke this bag of trash. And Lucas kicks it because he doesn't have a stick anymore. And Dustin just kind of plays along with the charade of like, oh, I'm looking for Dart. And when they do that, a cockroach, big one, which is probably like a Madagascar hissing cockroach, which probably isn't native to Hawkins, Indiana, but it accomplishes the purpose. It runs out of the trash and it starts kind of skittering down the pavement. And as it does that, we hear an overdubbed like narration of Mr. Clark saying, all creatures, like all living things, from complex mammals to single-celled organisms, they all react to danger. And he says, like, if you expose a bacterium to a toxin, it will flee or it will employ some other defense mechanism. And then when he says that, we cut to the inside of the buyer's house, and he continues his narration, and he says, we are the same way. And Will is kind of wrapped in a towel, and he's shirtless, but he's looking at this bathtub full of warm water. As Mr. Clark continues to explain, our heart starts racing, our palms get sweaty, and like we are experiencing this physical and emotional state of fear as Will continues to just look very worryingly and kind of shakingly at the warm bath water. And we see a shot from behind him, and we can see he's just drenched in sweat.
Yeah.
Kind of exactly exhibiting the exact same physical characteristics that Mr. Clark has explained in the narration. Then as he looks at the water, we see these brief flashes that are going on in Will's mind, and it's some weird tunnels. Just we get like half a second clips of these, 3 or 4 of them, as we kind of end the scene, he's just staring down the bathtub of warm water.
It looks like something's traveling fast through these tunnels, whether it's his vision, like he can see through them quickly, or something is progressing quickly through these tunnels.
Yep.
Not certain. The only reason my heart's not pounding and palms aren't sweaty right now is because we're only watching this in 3 and 5 minute clips. So
that's true.
I too would be experiencing more fear if we just watched it start to finish.
And we mentioned too something like there's something that happens in the show that you can't explain even as we try to in these recaps, and that's the swelling like music behind it, the kind of heartbeat. We literally hear a fast heartbeat racing in the background as Will stares at the water. So it's involving more of your senses than just your...
I just got goosebumps. Whoa!
Yeah, hopefully we don't experience any of Mom's spaghetti here coming up. So that's that scene. What is Will so scared about with the bathwater?
Oh my gosh. All right, so we're back. It's only 15 seconds later in the show because...
Yeah, but something happens. Will comes out of the bathroom. Joyce is on the phone, but she's gotten Hopper's answering machine probably for the 100th time. But Will quickly says, Mom, it's too hot. And she looks confused. She probably runs it at the same temperature every time for him.
Yeah.
And she walks into the bathroom, and the water has drained out like almost all the way. So not only did he say it's too hot, but he drained the water. Joyce kind of reaches down and splashes her hand in what's left, and is like, I can cool it down a little bit, but we need to get your body temp up. And from the doorway, Will, not sounding like himself this time. It's Will's voice, but it doesn't sound personality-wise like him. And he just says, no. And Joyce is looking at him, and then it cuts back to Will, and he just says, he likes it cold. And then he just kind of turns and walks away, and Joyce is sitting on the edge of the bathtub, like, who is he? What are you talking about?
Yeah, I think Joyce is intuitive enough to know that wasn't my boy who just said that. If I had to guess, I don't know what's coming, but if I had to guess, she's intuitive enough to know that that's not my Will.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. It sounded like his voice, but it did not feel like Will talking.
No. Not my will, but your will be done.
We cut back to Hopper's cabin, and he's nailing some boards up, trying to just very minimally patch the windows with some boards. And 11 is in a room, and she shuts the door, kind of indicating Hopper and her still aren't talking.
It's next morning.
Yes. And Hopper comes to 11's door, and he kind of looks down at the floor, and he kind of has a posture of softness a little bit. And he says, hey, kid, about last night. And then 11's kind of listening on the other side of the door, and Hopper takes a beat or two before he says the next thing. Like he's thinking of what to say. But then what he ends up saying is, I want this place cleaned up by the time I get back. Do you hear me? Maybe I'll consider fixing the TV. Like he was about to say something else, but then landed on kind of that stern tone that he's had with her.
Yeah, we were hoping maybe a little apology for at least just getting angry, but no, he kind of doubles down and lays down the log. And
you get the impression he did not intend to say that when he came to the door, but that's what came out. So he walks out of the cabin back to his police truck, and from inside the police truck we hear Flo calling him on the radio, Hop, come in, Hop, please come in. And Hopper thinks that she's going to kind of bust him for being late and says, I know, I'm on my way, and yes, I know what time it is. But what Flo says is, Joyce Byers has called 8 times this morning. 8 times. She says, for my sake, please deal with her. And then Hopper puts it in gear and just very calmly and slowly, normally pulls out. Nope, he doesn't. He peels out of the grass, little, leaf-filled gravel driveway in front of that cabin, and he's headed somewhere in a hurry, obviously, to deal with Joyce Byers. Yeah,
my word. It's strange that, because he wasn't like he was drunk in his car, but he just definitely looked like he was in a stupor, still tired. Yeah. But hearing that Joyce is called 8 times, he hops to it.
Yes, he does. Yeah, he doesn't look annoyed either.
No.
That Joyce, not like season 1 where he was just like, Joyce, he's,
When Joyce calls 8 times, he knows there's something actually wrong.
Yeah, especially
that only he can deal with.
Yeah, especially because he's told her to call him.
You call me first.
Yep, and she did.
Yep. Why do I feel like showering right now?
So a real brief scene, but before I think we get into probably something a little bit more substantial, so we'll recap this on its own. In the gym, a basketball game is happening again between Billy and Steve. Steve's guarding Billy, kind of goading him again, calling him King Steve. What you think? Coach is going to bench you now because I'm here, and then gives a really hard offensive kind of charge into Steve and knocks him flat on his back and actually hurts him. Steve looks kind of like he got the wind knocked out of him. And as Steve's laying on the ground, Billy reaches his hand down to let him up, and Steve grabs his hand, but then instead of helping him up, he bends down to Steve and says, your feet were moving. Set the next time and draw a charge. Yeah. And then kind of shoves him back to the ground. We cut immediately to the shower where Tommy and Steve and Billy are all taking a shower. Obviously a thirst trap for the ladies. But between the three of them, Tommy pretty much mentions that, Nancy is no longer with Steve, and then Nancy is now off with the freak's brother, meaning Jonathan, and says, oh, you didn't know. Jonathan and Nancy skipped school yesterday,
and they're still not here.
And they're still not back.
Yeah.
And Billy, faking a little sympathy, tells Steve, hey, don't worry about it. There's plenty of girls out there. I'll try to leave some for you. We get an idea of where Jonathan and Nancy are. They went to a park, and they're just sitting on a park bench. And Nancy says, it's 15 after. Like maybe she expected something to happen or somebody to be there before then. And Jonathan just says, I know, just give him time.
Give who time?
Him time.
Who is him? We don't know yet. And
as they sit there, they just start looking around, and it appears, well, Nancy says, that guy over there, he just talked to himself. And it's literally just a guy by himself at a picnic table reading a newspaper. But as soon as she says that, he looks up at her or at them. And then they continue looking around the park, and it seems like everybody who they see is suspicious.
Yeah.
And then people kind of do start looking, like a guy feeding ducks looks at them. Women running down the trail look at them. All throughout this scene, a kid is on one of those like metal springy bouncy things. Like this duck that's like going towards the camera, very Stanley Kubrick kind of like.
Yeah.
But then kids are playing Duck, Duck, Goose as this is happening. Eventually they get spooked enough that there are so many people watching them, it feels like to them. And they say, one of them says, I think we should go. And so they get up and start briskly walking away, and a man with a dog follows them, and then somebody else appears to be following them. A woman starts walking up to them as they get in the car, but Jonathan's car won't start. And the music is like swelling, and then a guy finally knocks on the glass of Nancy's side of the car, and she panics. And he says, you guys having some car troubles? You need a ride? And then they realize that there's like 3 other people kind of surrounding the car.
Yep.
And the guy finally says, you sure about that ride? And Jonathan and Nancy are kind of trapped in the car.
Right. I think those people disabled the car.
Oh.
So they couldn't flee. But we don't I don't think we recognize any of these people. So
2 of them are bald, which you mentioned, Mr. Baldo.
One of them I was like, maybe that's the character Mr. Baldo is based on. But yeah, so far
we don't know who they are.
Don't know who they are.
But they are honed in on them, and they're not going to let them leave, it seems like.
Nope. Finally, Hopper shows up.
And he pulls up to the buyer's house in his police truck, but he notices the front door is just wide open. He walks right in, and Joyce comes down, and, Hopper's like, hey, and Joyce says, thanks for coming or whatever. And Hopper goes, what is going on in here? It's freezing. And she brings Hopper into Will's bedroom, and we get a shot of Will sitting on the edge of his bed without a shirt on. The front door is open, and the bedroom door, at least, or the bedroom window, at least in Will's room, we presume maybe other places in the house, is wide open. The curtains are flowing, and it's freezing outside. It's really cold.
Yep.
And Will's just sitting there, and Hopper is looking at this shadow monster drawing from before, and he's asking Will questions like, this monster, you said he likes it cold. How do you know that? And Will just says, yes, he likes it cold. And he goes, I don't know. It's just like I know things I didn't know before.
Like in the back of his mind.
Yes. And then he says, they're just pressing him, and he kind of always responds with, I don't know. But then as they kind of press him more, he tries. And he said, it's like they're old memories, but they're not my memories. And then he also says, but they're not like old things that happened in the past. It's like they're now memories. And the 2 of the adults are just like, what? And Will, again, he's just like, I don't know. But he gets really emotional, just like he does kind of whenever he's having to kind of force his way through one of these. And he says, it's like it's growing, it's spreading, it's growing. And Hopper kind of perks up a little bit at growing or spreading, one of the 2. And again, we see those flashes in his mind from the previous scene of the kind of tunnels, like the fast moving kind of camera angles through the tunnels. And Joyce, Will apologizes again and just kind of breaks down in tears yet again into Joyce's arms. And as Joyce hugs him, she sees on the wall behind him his drawing of Will the Wise, kind of calling attention to the fact that he's a good artist, which we know already. And Joyce has an idea and says, what if you didn't have to use words? And we immediately cut to Will at a table with papers everywhere, and he dumps out a whole box of crayons and just starts going to town, just furiously scribbling on papers. But he's not drawing anything particular. I mean, someone as meticulous as Will is not drawing anything. He's just literally taking the crayon sideways even and like
Seemingly
shading
scribbling.
just massive things, but nothing makes sense. It's just pages full of crayon. And then out in the living room or the kitchen, wherever it is, the phone at the Byers house is ringing off the hook. Nobody's answering it.
He said it was the now memories are spreading,
Yep.
but also killing,
Yes.
whatever that could mean.
We don't know. But now memories is a weird concept to introduce at this point.
So growing up, I could not make it through an episode of Saved by the Bell because it feels like every episode was based on a little white lie that one of the characters just had to live with, and then 3 minutes left to go, they'd come clean and make everything right with hugs and whatever. But
Here we are 35 years later.
still struggling.
The phone that was ringing at the Byers house turns out to be Mike calling from the payphone at the school. And he gets the Byers answering machine and he hangs up and runs inside, but not before telling the friends that are kind of on the steps, Dustin and Will, or Dustin and Lucas, excuse me, let's come inside AV room right now. Like he kind of calls a meeting, and Max stands up, but Mike says party members only. And Max objects, and so do some of the other boys, and Mike just goes, no discussion, like no debate, party members only. This is non-negotiable, he says.
I think Dustin and Lucas say sorry, sorry, Max, sorry.
Yeah.
They're kind of like somewhat apologetic.
Exactly. But we find out what Mike has to discuss with them is something that Max still doesn't know anything about. He explains that Will...
And that neither Lucas or Dustin know up to this point. Because Mike starts with,
That's true.
Will didn't want me to say this.
Yeah, so they're so deep into this with Will that it's not worth bringing Max along, even if she doesn't know what's going on, to try to have to explain it or anything.
Yep.
So he says, Will told me that on Halloween night he saw this shadow monster. And if Will really does have true sight, which we haven't really had true sight explained to us, but we understand it maybe to be a D&D thing. He says if he really does have true sight, if he really can see into the upside down, then maybe, he saw this thing again last night. Or yesterday, whatever, in the field. And so they kind of consult Dustin for, the player's handbook explanation. And Dustin explains, well, if you're interacting with the ethereal plane, or if you can see into the ethereal plane, you can't interact with the material plane. As if to say, no, this thing can't really hurt him if he's living in the material plane and this thing is in the ethereal plane. But Mike very practically says, this isn't Dungeons and Dragons. So even though we've consulted you for your Dungeons and Dragons knowledge, it's probably not applying here because we don't really know what happened.
Right.
And so we need to find Dart. And Dustin gets a bit offended and says, what does Dart have to do with this? And Mike says, Will said that he heard him in the upside down.
Yep, heard him.
So he might have something to do with this. And if he does, we need to find him so that we can figure out what's going on. And Dustin ends the scene kind of looking maybe a little guilty, or he's feeling the weight of the little white lie that he's been keeping. Yeah.
And Mike's like, I'm going to go to Will's and see if I can get more information there. You two stay here and see if you can find Dart.
Yeah. So Mike's going to go to Will. We just accidentally got a frame into the next scene, but we'll get to that when we get to that. We're at Hopper's cabin, and 11 is looking at the TV, thinking maybe she can fix it, or maybe she can do something.
She's home alone.
With her mind. Yes, home alone. Hopper is presumably still out for the day, with dealing with Joyce and so on. But 11 finally finds behind the TV the broken cable. She, she doesn't have Radio Shack capabilities to solder wire together with her mind. At least she doesn't know how to. And so she kind of feels defeated that she can't fix the TV, and instead starts kind of picking up around the cabin. We see her lift this heavy bookcase with her mind, and then by hand start loading contents back onto it. She, starts sweeping, and she moves some stuff around. But as she's sweeping, some glass kind of brushes up against a crack or a slit in the wood floor, and it's kind of hidden under a couch. So she pushes the couch back with her mind and starts noticing that this thing on the floor might be a door or something to investigate. And sure enough, it is a secret
storage type.
Yeah, like a
hidden
panel that she picks up, and then from below the floor, we see a little crawl space, and her little flashlight, she finds a flashlight somewhere and starts shining it around. And there's just boxes labeled all over this little area.
New York.
Vietnam.
And then?
Dad stuff. And then one that says Hawkins Lab. And so she somehow, we don't see her, but she somehow gets this box out of the crawl space and starts going through it and pulls a file folder out and starts reading it, but it's upside down. And then she flips it over and sees, we don't see what's on the page, but something that she's investigating in this kind of manila file folder with some documents, it appears.
This could either make her totally pissed off that Hopper's been hiding so much from her. Or maybe this will justify his concern about her. Like maybe she'll realize, wow, he's really done a lot of research about me and who I am to try to keep me safe.
Yeah, or just she just wants to know more about her own journey. Like maybe, we don't really get much emotion from her.
Nope, not yet.
Before we cut right to the next scene, which we're looking at on the screen right in front of us, and we will recap that. Well, Jonathan and Nancy got caught. They are in a interrogation room, one that we've seen before. At the Hawkins lab, and they're looking at a CCTV kind of security camera, and no one is in there with them. It's just Jonathan and Nancy. But Nancy finally stands up from her chair and yells at the camera, hey, let us out of here. She uses some more colorful language than that. But finally, Dr. Sam walks into the room and kind of cuts the tension a little bit and says, oh, it's not very pleasant in here, is it? And then apologizes and says, well, hospitality is not our strong suit, scientists and all. He's very likable and kind of diffuses the tension. But Nancy is still just staring him down. And finally, Dr. Sam just kind of looks at her and goes, okay, and looks at his watch and goes, yeah. And says, you up for a walk? Kind of does a motion and then leaves the room and says, I'm assuming you're behind me. And as they walk down the hallway in Hawkins' lab, he says the line, men of science have made abundant mistakes of every kind. Quoting some scientist named George Sarton, asks them if they know who George Sarton is, and they don't respond. And he goes, doesn't matter. And essentially admits that Hawkins' lab has made mistakes. And Nancy's not satisfied with the word mistake. And she goes, you killed Barbara. And he says, yes, abundant mistakes. As if like to say, yeah, I already said that. But he takes them down the hallway. And in these glassed off rooms, we kind of rewound it to find that these other scientists look like they're doing testing on the field components that we saw from the previous episode. Core samples, a pumpkin, plants, stuff like that. So presumably doing the tests that Hopper asked them to do.
What did Hopper say? Prove me wrong?
Convince me.
Convince me.
So as they walk down the hallway, Dr. Sam explains to them, hey, we admit that we've made mistakes, even abundant mistakes, and says...
But those men...
yes, the men that were here, all of the people that were responsible for all of those mistakes are gone now. And he's like, I'm the schmuck that they brought in to deal with this.
To fix it.
Yeah, to fix it. And so as they walk down the hallway, they get closer and closer to somewhere. And Dr. Sam says, do you want to know what really killed your friend? Mm-hmm. And they take them into the control room, portal wall, that famous room that we know so well now. And Jonathan and Nancy are kind of overwhelmed by what they see. And he says that, the mistake that they made, they can't fix it, but they can keep it from spreading. Uh-huh. As we see a guy don that thermal kind of suit with the flamethrower we've seen before.
Like pulling weeds.
He says it's just like pulling weeds. You got to do regular maintenance to keep it from spreading. Jeez. And so he said, we don't know how to fix it, but we can stop it from spreading. And then he kind of appeals maybe to the sense of patriotism, or at least the understanding of geopolitical, situations, where he says, now imagine if a foreign adversary, and then he says, say maybe the Soviets, were to find out that we made this mistake. Would they even think of that as a mistake? And could they try to replicate it themselves? Mm-hmm. And so Sam essentially is telling them, we are stopping it from spreading, and we can't not only can we not let this mistake spread, we also can't even let the truth spread because of the potential ramifications from a political or military standpoint.
Yep.
And then kind of says so he says, just like pulling weeds, just as the flamethrower guy goes ham on this portal wall thing and says, by any means necessary.
Yep.
And so this whole time he's very unconcerned about it. He has his hands in his lab coat pocket or whatever. But then he says, so we understand each other, don't we? Kind of implying you're not going to let this get out.
Yeah, he's still making the delineation between people like Barbara's parents. They're on the outside of this knowledge, and they don't need to know this exists.
Yes.
But poor Nancy and Jonathan, they're on the inside of this mistake. They know something about it now. They know a whole lot more about it, and it's just it's a secret they have to carry with them, because the Barbara's parents of the world can't know about this.
Yep.
At this point, as I sit here, I'm still 100% trusting Dr. Sam. I don't think he has any. I truly believe that Dr. Sam. I can't remember what happens. I've seen it before, but I honestly can't remember. Yeah. I truly believe Dr. Sam has everybody's best interest in mind as I sit here.
I'm not as convinced. I'm about 60-40 that he's...
Good guy, bad guy?
No, bad guy, good guy. I think that I'm 60%, not necessarily bad guy, but he is a little bit too charming for me.
Okay.
He's a little bit too... like the bedside manner with Will and the kind of joking around with Stephen, or with Nancy and Jonathan. Whoops, that was a faux pas. Mm-hmm. I just got he just feels a little bit too polished and charming, too chummy for what's going on. Like, you literally are in a lab with this mucousy portal wall mistake.
Yeah.
It seems to be downplaying a little bit too much. I think really what it was the way he looked at Hopper in the field as he left, and the confrontational nature that he had, kind of the tone that he took with Hopper. And the fact that he watched Hopper and Joyce leave. The shots that they send of him, I think, are supposed to make you feel maybe like you shouldn't trust him as much.
Fair enough.
I agree. I do not remember what happened. But just the fact that he's at the lab and is dealing with all of this in such a counterintuitive way makes me go, what does he know? Now, if it were to be revealed that he really is innocent, it wouldn't be too much like, whoa, I did not see that coming.
Sure.
Because you do want to trust him. Paul Reiser plays an amazing character here. But right now, I'm not as convinced as that, but we shall see what happens.
Yep.
Jonathan and Nancy are confronted with this thing for the first time, and they don't really say anything.
I wonder if they will say, about Nancy having already slipped through a portal.
Yep.
Maybe
they don't mention that at all.
Yep. Hopper is not always a man of enough words. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, but he's always got the right ones.
The right ones, but never enough.
So fresh off the scene at the lab, we cut back to Will still shirtless in his cold house, still at his desk, just scribbling like a maniac, which is unusual for him because he's such a great, meticulous artist.
Yes.
And he's just scribbling. And every page that he's drawing has some sort of blue and black on it, some sort of brown. And as soon as he's done with a page, he's just kind of throwing it off the desk and it's just falling to the ground. And we see just hundreds of pieces of paper all on the ground in Will's room. And Joyce is kind of, we find out, is kind of collecting them in bundles and bringing them out to the living room and showing them to Hopper. It's so confused. Like, it's just more of the same. It's just scribbles. There's no perceivable
purpose,
image.
Yep.
And as Hopper's going through them, Joyce sees something in a couple consecutive pages that makes her stop and puts a couple of them together and realizes they connect. And as soon as they do that, we get a great shot of Hopper clearing the room, just like pushing a coffee table out of the way and like just trying to open up as much floor space as possible.
Yep.
And he and Joyce begin laying these pieces of paper out as they see them connecting.
Like a puzzle.
As Will just continues to draw and draw and draw. He's supplying them more pieces to their puzzle as they're putting it together. Then we kind of cut to a little bit later. They've put it all together. They've kind of taped them together on the floor. They even go up the couches and the furniture. And sure enough, it's a fully connected image. And they're trying to make any sense of it. Like,
Joyce says lightning.
Yeah, she
Hopper
says
says lightning. Maybe.
No, I think Joyce does. It's like lightning. It's like the kind of going in all directions,
but it's not red.
Yeah, Hopper says like the storm. You think it has to do with that storm? And she's like, no, he used red for that. This is blue and black with some dirt color. And that piques Hopper's interest, and he goes, what did he say? They were killing.
Spreading.
Killing. Yeah, Joyce says they were spreading, and Hopper goes, and killing. He said they were killing.
Yeah.
And he obviously, not that long ago, was just out at these fields noticing all this death on these plants and the pumpkins and everything. And so he puts it together that he's drawing vines. And Joyce says, like, what are you talking about? And he says, he's drawing vines. And he puts his police hat on and walks out.
And then slowly drives out of the driveway, presumably.
Yeah, we don't see him drive away, but we can only assume that he just very calmly
put it in the drive.
Puts it in gear, yeah. It doesn't slip the clutch or anything. But Hopper's on a mission.
Do you think the Duffer Brothers own a racing team? Like, as a side hobby with all their Stranger Things earnings, they're like one level below NASCAR. They've got a team.
Or like the very first project they ever worked on, some executive was like, whatever you do in this series, you are not allowed to peel out with a car. And now that they are on Netflix, they're like, we'll do whatever we want to do.
We got a separate peel
every time we show a car.
We have a peel out budget.
Exactly. Oh, there's some more peeling out in these scenes.
Okay, so
we're at the school, and Lucas and Max are kind of walking out towards the parking lot, but Max is trying to get away from Lucas, essentially.
End of the day.
Yes. And Lucas is like, trying to get her attention, and Max is like, get away from me. I don't want to talk to you.
Right.
Lucas is trying to make sense of it and like try to get an explanation from her as to why she's acting like this. He's like, he eventually says, I don't understand. And Max turns around finally and faces him and yells, no, I don't understand.
Right.
You guys act like you want me a part of your group, but then you just treat me like crap, like garbage, she says. Garbage. And Lucas is like, how do I explain this?
Right.
And he's like, there's just some things. Just some things that we can't share with you. Max accuses them of hiding secrets like they're in second grade. And Max says, did you hide secrets from Elle? Did you have secrets from Elle? And
then Lucas is like, how'd you know about her?
Yeah. Lucas goes, it stops him in his tracks. And he
Yeah.
goes, how do you know about Elle? And she just doubles down. Did you have secrets from Max or from Elle? So she eventually just, again, like turns around and walks away.
Yep.
Because Lucas has no recourse. He can't explain to her what things he's talking about.
Right.
And so, like, finally, Max just skates away, but she doesn't skate away into nothing. She skates away towards Billy and his car. Billy's leaning on his car like we always see him.
This time she's after school to his car in time to catch a ride home.
Yes.
But
she's coming off this conversation with Lucas, and she's not, happy. She's a little upset. Mm-hmm. And Billy is just like, who was that kid you were talking to? And she was like, oh, just a dumb friend. And like, it's talking about his stupid class assignment, and he's like, then why were you so upset? And Max says, why do you care? And Billy goes, so hard. I mean, so brutal. He goes, because you're a piece of shit, but we're family now, so I have to.
Yeah.
Just the worst treatment of her.
Yep.
Then he goes even further down the hateable rabbit hole.
Yep.
To essentially tell Max there are certain type of people that we don't hang around, and that kid is one of them. What else are we supposed to think other than Billy is being racist towards Lucas?
That's the only thing I could read into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, Lucas has given Billy no other cause for alarm with his character.
Yeah.
They probably have not even interacted. So Billy is just saying don't hang out with him because he's black.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't say that explicitly, but there's, like you said, there's no other explanation that he would have as to why she shouldn't hang out with him. Because like you said, there's no way Billy has any idea of who this kid is.
Nope.
Other than the color of his skin. So, yeah. Billy just goes two levels down from the already basement that he was. And then what does he do? Peels his Camaro out of the parking lot.
No, you forgot something. He lights a cigarette for... Oh, wait, sorry, that's redundant. Of course he's smoking as he peels out of the parking lot.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Boy.
We're going to recap two scenes now, neither of which have very much dialogue.
Yeah.
But they're chock full.
The first scene is Hopper, right after Billy peels his Camaro out of the school parking lot. We see Hopper absolutely tearing down some dirt road, and he's pulling into Merrill's pumpkin farm. Mm-hmm. The first pumpkin farm that he experienced this rot in. And he pulls into the field, kind of in a random place in the field, and gets out of his truck. And we see him walk through this field with a shovel over his shoulder. He has a plan. And he literally does just walk out kind of to a non-distinct, randomly selected place in the field.
Yep.
Among all of this rot and all these dead pumpkins, and flies are still everywhere. It's not settled down really, although there's no portions of pumpkins anymore. It's just full black, dead kind of balls of pumpkins, and he just starts digging.
Yep, so many flies. The flies are almost, to our ears, the flies are loud. It's just so much gross.
Lots and lots of flies. Then we see a scene back at Hopper's cabin where 11 is still going through this Hawkins lab box. And she has got, just like at Will's house with all of his drawings, papers all over this place, she's got documents and papers everywhere.
Yep.
She finally pulls out a folder that says Ives, Terry. Mm-hmm. And she reads it out loud to herself. Ives, Terry. Mm-hmm. And she starts going through these newspaper clippings. Indiana woman sues the Department of Energy. And, daughter Jane accused of being stolen away from her.
At birth.
And 11 kind of looks around the cabin and finds a transistor radio. Like a little emergency radio. And she turns it on. It's powered on. And she finds a staticky channel.
Yep.
and dons a mask again and is holding the paper of, she sees a picture of Papa, way younger, back in the 70s. And this woman that she maybe believes to be Terry Ives.
Papa probably walking with Terry Ives, yep.
And so she dons a mask and gets this thing. She has a picture in her hand and she holds it up to her chest and finds herself back in the void. And we see from behind Terry Ives, who we've met, in a rocking chair. And as Eleven approaches her in this void, she's repeating this phrase over and over again. Rainbow, 3 to the left, 4 to the right. And then she also says the word 450. Rainbow, 3 to the left, 4 to the right. And it's still this kind of catatonic state that we saw her in. But as soon as 11 comes around the rocking chair to the front of her, Terry Ives stops talking and appears to, her eyes are closed up to this point, and then she opens her eyes right at 11 and says, Jane. And 11 reaches down towards her hand, and Terry's finger is like reaching up toward her, almost as if she really is seeing her in the void.
Yep.
And as soon as 11 reaches down to touch her hand, she mists away and she's gone. And 11 is just shouting, Mama, Mama, and then starts yelling, Mama, Mama. And she takes the blindfold off in the cabin. Obviously, her nose is bleeding. And she's still yelling and sobbing, Mama, and just cries and cries and cries.
The scene that this is most similar to is when 11 had visited Mike.
Yes.
Using the same technique, and Mike's in the little tent fort in the basement. And we think like Mike senses that 11 is very close.
Yeah.
We think they're going to make some sort of cross-dimension connection. They don't, and we don't know how much of a connection that Terry and 11 just had now either.
Yeah, but unlike the scene with Mike is the one who shuts that down by kind of walking away. It just gets better and better.
I mean,
so we get an overhead shot of fall foliage in Hawkins, and then a banging at a door, and it's Mike banging on the buyer's door. And Joyce answers the door, but just kind of opens it a little bit.
Right.
Not her normally welcoming, hospitable self.
Especially for one of Will's friends.
Exactly. And Mike asks about Will, and Joyce says, now's really not a good time. And
not feeling well.
Mike says, is he okay? And she goes, well, he's not really feeling well. So she comes outside to kind of talk to Mike more kind of, alone. And just says, I'll have him stop by. Like, I'll tell him that you stopped by, and then I'll have him come essentially later and say hi to you.
Yeah.
Clearly just trying to get Mike out. And Mike's kind of standing there, not accepting her rejection.
Nope.
And says, it's about the shadow monster, isn't it? And obviously that perks Joyce up right away.
Yep.
And they don't say anything else. That's the end of that scene. But then we cut immediately to Hawkins' lab, and Jonathan and Nancy are being walked out to their car by this guy from the park who was reading the newspaper.
Yep.
So
talking to himself.
Yeah, the guy who's talking to himself. They're not being paranoid. It really was agents that really took him to the lab. So he hands Jonathan his keys to his car. His car is sitting right outside of the lab. Not in the parking lot that we saw Joyce and Hopper park in. Like, it's pulled right up to the side walk out of the lab.
That's a nice treatment.
And he says, have a nice day. And sure enough, Jonathan puts the keys in the ignition and it starts right up. Not like it did at the park.
Nope.
Jonathan and Nancy are now driving away from the lab, not saying anything to each other.
For a minute.
They are looking at each other and just driving down the road. And we're like, what is going on? And then Nancy pulls out a little bag with a zipper on it. And she unzips this bag and pulls out a recording device That's what they got at Radio Shack in the last episode. That's been their plan all along. And Nancy starts playing the recording on the tape of everything that Dr. Sam had said in the previous scene about, everything that happened to your brother and Miss Holland. We can't seem to erase this mistake, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
Everything that Dr. Sam said was now recorded on tape. And Jonathan looks at Nancy and says, do you still want to do this? And Nancy says, let's burn that lab to the ground. And they're pulling out on a street, and the sign says, leaving Hawkins, Indiana.
Yep.
Where are they going?
I have no clue. This is like Hopper level.
What a genius plan.
Hopper level in infiltration, if you will. Like,
yes.
Their plan, they did what Hopper did, like get themselves stuck in the lab or get themselves abducted by the lab. Same thing Hopper did, just to get inside and get more information. So we're kind of proud of the kids in this moment. But
so clever for them to, like, everything that we've seen them in the park, like, oh, let's get out of here. And, hey, let us out of this thing. Like, that's all a part of their plan all along.
Yeah. They were probably knew they were being, like, their lips were being read. So they're like, we should go. No, maybe he'll be here.
Yeah.
Who's he? We don't know. But it was a good ruse all along. No clue where they're going, though.
No, but they've got enough to burn the lab to the ground, potentially, if they get the right audience.
Yep. Oh, man.
This why, like, it's these two scenes, the last two scenes,
Jeez.
are why we love this show so much.
Yep.
Right after the last scene of Jonathan and Nancy at the lab, we're back at Dustin's house, and his mom is trying to feed their cat, and she's pouring food into its bowl and calling for it. Musey.
Mm-hmm.
Totally innocuous, but Dustin comes in and kind of hurriedly is trying to go to his room, and his mom tries to interrupt him, but Dustin kind of brushes her off. And Dustin gets to his room and is talking to Dart like, hey, I need to talk to you. It's about my friend Will. And there's a sheet or a towel or something on the terrarium. And he pulls it off and realizes the front piece of glass is all shattered. Dart is not in his tank.
Nope.
And there's a, like, skin. Presumably like a shedding kind of
like
molting situation. And Dustin picks it up and it's all slimy. And there's like slime dripping from the broken shards of glass on the tank. And Dustin picks it up and is like, Dart? And then he hears a kind of a, maybe a roar, like here's something.
A slurping.
From the other side of the room. And he turns around. It kind of startles him. And then he notices there's like spots of black on his floor. There's like a blood trail kind of up a chair and over the back of this chair in the corner. And he's following this sound and sight of this like trail of blood. And he realizes as he peers over the back of this chair that Dart is now humongous compared to what he was last time we saw him.
Oh, yeah.
Is like muscular and like lean and has fully formed. He's not like this little cute slug anymore.
Nope.
And he is full on eating Muse, the cat.
R.I.P. Muse.
Take my hat off.
In Muse.
And Dustin peers over and doesn't say anything, but Dart, we should call him by his proper government name now, D'Artagnan, notices that Dustin kind of is paying attention to him.
Yep.
And turns around, and we see for the first time Dart has the kind of closed flower petal mouth of the Demogorgon from the last episode, or last scene.
Yep.
Or season. And soon as he kind of turns towards Dustin, he roars as the Demogorgon and opens his full flower petal mouth. Oh.
So, did you notice? I think I saw Dart's tail wagging, as if he was happy to see Dustin.
Oh, I didn't
home.
notice that.
I think his tail wagged, and just like a puppy, he's wagging his tail and like roaring when your master comes home.
Oh, jeez.
But yeah, he was absolutely behind a chair, devouring the family cat.
Yeah.
Just no more Muse.
Yeah. And now we know what we think we've known all along.
Right.
Which is...
Not a pollywog.
Yes, this is not a pollywog. It's some distant relative or close relative to the Demogorgon.
Yep.
But then as soon as that happened, that scream happens, we see Hopper out in the field throwing dirt out of a hole. And he has, however long it's taken him, dug a pretty impressive hole.
Yeah.
For a man with a shovel.
Almost, if not to the top of his own head. So presumably a 6 foot deep hole.
For sure, at least. And like 10 feet wide. And it's just digging. And finally, last shove into the ground hits a... Subtitles say squelching. And just hits this and it's kind of grabbing on his shovel. Like he pulls it out, but it's just this kind of slimy, mucusy membrane that he's kind of busted through.
Yeah, imagine going from shoveling dirt to you accidentally hit a whale underground. Like, there's a difference
yes.
in the substance.
But as soon as he breaks through this little membrane, dirt kind of starts falling through like a hole.
Uh-huh.
And it opens up as Hopper kind of digs, grabbing his shovel, and the dirt's falling in. And it doesn't open up on its own, but like Hopper kind of facilitates the dirt falling into the hole and it kind of opening up to the point where it's big enough that Hopper jumps through.
Mm-hmm.
And from below, we see a kind of a tunnel.
Yep.
As Hopper, we see his legs and then finally his whole body. It's big enough that Hopper's whole body fits in.
Yep.
And Hopper has a flashlight in his hand. And as Hopper shines the flashlight kind of towards the camera, James Bond style, the entire shot, as the music is going and with this weird kind of industrial clanging sound in the music, the shot flips as Hopper's standing in the tunnel and Hopper is upside down in the tunnel. Roll end credits.
Yeah, this is a real big problem for Hawkins. Real big problem.
Yeah, or Hopper's close to finding something out.
So it's the upside down because we see the same particulate floating in the air. And this tunnel reminds us of Will's visions of something in a tunnel, whether it was his own mind or something else running. But the tunnel kind of looks familiar based on what Will has been envisioning earlier in this episode. Hopper
found it. I mean, he had the idea to go out digging in a field.
And when he dropped in, he just goes, "Oh, Jesus." Like he's as soon as he gets in, he knows I think a lot of he still has more questions, of course, but a lot of his recent problems, there's a new level to explore, if you will.
Yeah, it's a kind of a familiar look we've seen on Hopper's face that he's discovered something, but it's something he wishes he wouldn't have discovered.
That's a good way to say it.
So we leave Hopper in the upside down, or at least in a tunnel that we think is connected to the upside down, as he's got this flashlight. And it's the end of this episode, but we don't know how much he's going to explore of these tunnels.
Well, I think for our first in-person podcast, that was it was nice to see one kind of in a live situation.
Yeah,
we haven't yet.
So now that we're in the same time zone, what do you think about watching the next episode together?
I don't know what it's called, but I almost guarantee it's worth one more hour.
I think so too. Why don't you watch it and then come back to see our recap of it here on the Hawkins Observer.
See you next time.